Hey, y'all. So, if you've been following this podcast for a while, you already know my sister, Rivkie Brownstien, the amazing advanced nurtured heart approach trainer, house organizer, food planner, boundaries expert. Her list of credentials is quite large, and we have been gifted with having her here a few times already. But today, I want to specifically hone in on her CTI experience and sharing that experience with you all, because hopefully you've already heard about the in-person women's only CTI certification training intensive 4-day experience deep dive into the nurtured heart approach in November. Coming up very, very soon. Registration closes first. So it is time to start making your decisions. And I really hope that we get to see you there in person. But today we're going to hear about Rivkie's experience at the CTI. So Rivkie, take a minute to introduce yourself and then we'll get right into your story.
Hi, I'm Rivkie Brownstien. I live in Philadelphia. I moved here about 2 years ago. I'm a mom. I have 5 kids, 5 beautiful kids that I love very much. The oldest is 19 and the youngest is 9. And I thank you for interviewing me. I'm happy to share whatever you want to know about the CTI.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear from you, like going back to the beginning of your nurtured heart journey or whatever it is, like um, what got you into nurtured heart in the first place, and then what propelled you to actually taking the intensive training.
Well, what got me into Nurtured Heart Approach in the first place is, a few of our siblings were using it, and mostly I would just say the reason why I thought of taking the CTI is because of you, Mussy, because you were really encouraging it. But the reason why I decided to go and become a trainer is not really so much for me to teach it to other people, not really at first, not really so much to learn how to do it with my kids. I feel like I intuitively did Nurtured Heart with my children, which is why when I learned Nurtured Heart, I was like, wow, I never knew what I am doing is that there's something called the Nurtured Heart, which is what I believe in. So that was really validating for me. But the main reason why I went to the CTI to begin with was because I felt like I wasn't really applying the love that I wanted to give to my children to myself. And at a certain point, I felt like it was getting in the way of my connection with my children. Because, if you're beating yourself up in your own head or um, being hard on yourself for every single mistake you make, how much positivity do you have flowing to the other person? And I just felt really stuck. I didn't feel that so much when my kids were younger, but as I started to get older, I just was like, how do I shift my own energy towards myself so that I can continue to pour that love into them? I don't know how to do this. And so, after hearing about the Nurture Heart approach and how it's all about, an energetic shift, I just really wanted to have that energetic shift for myself. And like basically learn about it through the lens of like, I'm applying this to myself, to me. Um, and so that's really why I went. That's why I wanted to go.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And it opens up a whole other side of the CTI, which is absolutely was my experience and transformative to me in the way that I really shifted the way I see myself and like literally walked away loving myself, when before I was so sort of lost and there were parts of me that I really was embarrassed about and ashamed about and all that. Definitely didn't know how to talk nicely to myself. But I'm curious about the actual experience at the CTI. Did you find that it helped with that? And how did it help with that? And what was that experience like?
Well, I loved it. I feel very grateful that I was able to go and it was still in person before COVID. The experience was so beautiful to just be with so many like-minded people. Um, I'm usually like maybe one of the most sensitive people in the room, but like we all were. And I'm very passionate about a lot of things, and we all were about the same things. And it was like, wow, like so many people just like me. So I really felt at home. And anything that I wanted to talk about or was passionate about, there were discussions, and it was really, really beautiful. What I loved the most was how it wasn't just, like a workshop where you're learning the information. We got to practice in small groups And like any energy that came up or trigger that came up, we're able to discuss it in our small groups. Like, how do I apply it and practice? And I feel like that was the most helpful for me. Everybody was so supportive of each other, like vulnerable and open of like why we got here and what we want out of this. And through the sharing and practice, I feel like it helped me to really learn how to use it in my life. Um, all the activities, that we did, we would stop and like do an activity, and the epiphanies, we would share like I feel like everybody got chances to share, even though there were so many people. And just being in person with everybody and forming, connections. And even when it was over, like at night, having long talks with people about like what it means to them. It was just really inspiring, beautiful, a great, great experience that like I'm so grateful that I had.
Yay. And Rifki's going to be there in November, so yay for that as well. Can you reflect a little bit on that inner process, on what maybe shifted for you inside? Maybe some of that self-talk or whatever it was before CTI, and then what started shifting inside during CTI?
Sure. I mean, I feel like I'm being very vulnerable, but I mean, I'm
Thank you.
human just like everyone else. So I'm assuming other humans might relate. um, so I just feel like when I would struggle with something, I would try to push myself to do better with negativity. Like, for example, if I had a hard time connecting with one of my children. So I found myself saying, like, what kind of a mother has a hard time connecting to their children? Like, it's your child, right? Like, Rivkie, get it together. And um, I, because I love my kids so much and because I was so determined to connect with them and love them and be positive, whenever I couldn't or didn't or just had a hard day, I just telling myself, shaming or blaming myself just wasn't working. And I just didn't know how to get out of that self talk. And so after coming to the CTI and really learning the approach in that way, where I could really internalize it, I was able to shift and in that situation, be like, what kind of a mother wants to connect to their child? What kind of a mother wants hurts their heart hurts when there's a moment of disconnection? Like, I'm so loving, like there's nothing that I care more about than my kids, and I felt so good about that. Or like I said in the beginning, like I'm sensitive, right? Like I have sensitivities, and so if I would see something that would hurt my heart, or like be like, oh, that's not okay, instead of being like, stop judging, I would be like, I'm so passionate about justice. Like, I am going to get out there and be on a stage and tell people, teach people. Not only am I going to teach people about how to be with their children, I'm going to teach the parents how to love themselves so that they don't need to yell at their children and curse them out. So if I found, instead of that blaming of like, why are you judging other people? It was like, no, I have a passion inside of me for like justice and self-love and feeling good, that I have a gift to share. And the fact that I have emotion about this tells me that. So I feel like the biggest shift was that whatever comes up for me, whatever came up for me, I was able to say like, okay, what positive can I see here and how can I use that in my life? Can I give an example of this?
Please.
So one really good example is, um, one of my children were telling me things that I did that they didn't like, and it was quite a few. And I didn't feel very good about, I started to first get into that place of like, okay, I'm not feeling really good, or like, maybe what's wrong with them? They're not being grateful. And that shift right away of like, what greatness can I see in them, first of all? And I was able to tell my child, like, I so appreciate that you trust me to share how you feel with me, and that you obviously care about our relationship, and that you are honest and you're not just like holding it in. And then later, I felt bad a little bit about myself, just using the approach on myself, which I wouldn't have been able to do before because I didn't know about this. It's like, what kind of a mother listens to their child saying negative things? What kind of a mother validates their child and appreciates their child? I could have told her, you're not being grateful, or you're being disrespectful, or you're not, or, look at the positive. Why are you looking at the negative? But I didn't. And I sat there and I took it, and I didn't, cry and tell her like, I didn't make her responsible for my feelings. And even though, it took time to get there, like, okay, what qualities am I showing right now? But I was able to see it. And I think that's like the biggest shift for me, to see qualities of greatness in other people and in myself, no matter what the situation. Like I didn't know how to do that. And the fact that I could do that today is very, very empowering. I'm not always able to do it right away. Sometimes it's a process, but the fact that I even have that option of like, what's great about this here is so freeing, because there's always an opportunity to shift whatever is coming up for something really helpful and, growth oriented.
Wow, that is such a beautiful transformation, and one that I relate to a lot. And it's once I experienced this like self love and ability to be like my own best friend. I know we both do the workshop, like transform your inner critic, become your own best friend. Um, it's like, it's so empowering because I'm always with me, and the opposite is also true. When I'm my worst critic, I'm always with me. So it's like, even if I'm surrounded by loving spouse and loving children and loving, workplace and everything's loving around me, if I'm my own inner critic, I am walking around bashing myself. That's my primary relationship, is with myself. And that's what I'm offering to myself, versus even if I'm surrounded by crazy intensity and toxicity and horrible things all around me, if I'm my own best friend, I'm rooted and grounded and secure in a relationship that's with me all the time. It's like creating a secure attachment with my own inner wealth, with my own self, that like I can bring myself back to that confidence that I'm okay and I can do this and I'm actually amazing. And that like rewiring of attachment has definitely been the biggest transformative thing for me as well. And I'd love to hear from you, like walking out of the CTI and out of that experience of like this shift and like learning to speak to you differently. How did you see that impact you on a day to day level moving forward?
I mean, in a huge way. I always wanted to be a coach. I always wanted to help others, and I just couldn't. I just felt so stuck. And just one example, when I was so scared to give my first workshop, so scared, I, in the past, I would have been like, "You're so scared. Why would you do this? This is not for you." And I wouldn't do it. But I was able to say, "You are so brave. You are scared and you're doing it anyway. You made mistakes and you showed up again anyway." So I feel like the biggest change that it did for me is that I was able to show up for the things I want to do, even though it was hard. And even though I wasn't as confident as I wanted to be. And even though I made mistakes, I was able to show up the next moment, and appreciate that. And I think I was at a place where I felt very stuck. Um, that's why I went to the CTI, because there was many years where I just felt great with my kids and my relationships, and then I just felt stuck. And I was like, I just need, we all have periods of stuckness. And for me, what helped me get out of that stuckness was the CTI, was the nurtured heart approach, because no matter what, because in the stuckness, it's like, okay, you feel stuck, but you're taking a step. Like, you're so committed, to yourself, or, you know, um, I don't know, like, instead of being like, "Why aren't you doing more?" I was like, "Well, you're doing so much more than you did yesterday. Look how far you've come." And so I guess the biggest shift for me is that things started opening up in my life that I always wanted to do, but just didn't know how, or didn't think I could do it right, or even making a video. I would never make a video. And today, like, I don't know how to use all the, I don't know, things to make it the most professional, but like, I did it anyway, and my authentic self, and I'm choosing to not care what people think. And that shows, a lot of inner courage, and I could feel good about it. So I guess the biggest shift for me is like, I'm able to actively use it in my life to encourage myself to do things, instead of actively beating myself up to feel stuck. So I felt it helped me get unstuck.
Wow. Such a like big and exciting opportunity, like what's possible for us all out there for ourselves. And like we were created to be great. We were created for greatness. There's no question. God doesn't make mistakes. Every single person on this planet is here to enhance the world, and we're all better for it. And when we can know that and see that and stand in that, the doors that open, the meaning that comes with living with purpose and feeling able to like show up for that purpose is just It's delicious. That's how I feel. It's delicious. Um, yeah, thank you for sharing your personal experience so vulnerably and authentically. And I feel it. And I've seen you go through this whole journey. I've seen every step of the way. And it's just amazing how natural it is. Like we had this discussion a while back about how first giving the workshops was like a whole ordeal. And I was telling you how I don't really prepare anymore. I just kind of show up and speak from my heart. And you were like, I don't know, that's never going to be me, And now it's like so natural for you. And you're making the videos and you're showing up for things and open to public speaking and training schools and just all the things, and trying new things. It's really amazing how this can really help us to grow into our best selves and be open to keep growing no matter like the negativity doesn't get us down because we're able, like you said, to shift it back into just seeing our greatness. It's so beautiful. I guess my last question would be, as we wrap up here, um, how, if at all, did you see it impact your other relationships? Like this was work done for you, on you, with you, and it impacted you. But did you also notice it impacting your ability to be in the world with others, like your family and, other people?
I mean, yeah, I believe that the relationship we have with ourselves affects all the other relationships we have. Like, I used to be really judgmental. I'm grateful I'm not anymore. And I was like trying to not be. And the only way I was able to not be is when I stopped judging myself. The only way I can really see the positive in others is if I'm being positive with myself. The only way I could not make a big deal about other people's mistakes is if I'm not making a big deal about my own mistakes. So the way that I work on my relationships with other people is through working on my relationship with myself. If I'm taking care of myself and I feel good, I can then help other people feel good around me. If I'm not feeling good and I'm letting it out on other people, it's not about being better to those people, even though it is, but that's not where it is. It's like, how do I get myself to feel more regulated? And automatically I will be there for other people. So it really changes my relationship with everyone. I just feel like I have like a much more positive energy, but it's not just that. It's also, even when I don't, I'm able to get through that in a way where it's more positive. Instead of apologizing all the time, I'm able to thank the other person for their patience or for their forgiveness or for their love, even though I'm imperfect. Instead of being like, oh, I'm so sorry, I always mess up, I can be like, you know what? You are so patient with me. Even though I mess up, you still love me and show up for me. And when I can feel that gratitude and express that to that other person, the other person appreciates it too. And it's just like, or I remember one time with my son, I don't know, he spoke very disrespectfully to me, and it was and I really wanted to give him a lecture about it. There's something about like being in that negativity that feels like a release, that feels like I don't know, getting out that negative. And I'm like, no, I'm going to use the nurtured heart approach and I'm going to look for that tiny thing that is going well. And I went over to him and I said, right now, I see you taking deep breaths and you are not speaking to me disrespectfully. And I see that you know about respect and you care about respect because right now you stopped speaking to me that way. And I really appreciate that. And I hugged him. And that was a moment of connection that I never would have thought about using that as a moment of connection. The lecture would have been a moment of disconnection where he would, and I still do that sometimes. I never, when I teach the nurture heart approach, the number one thing I say all the time is like, guys, I'm like practicing this with you. And every day at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm not going to focus on my mistakes and those moments that are hard. It's not like, oh, we become a pro and you never make mistakes, but that's the whole point. It's like in the mistakes, in the problems, like how can we um, make that a moment of connection with myself, with someone else, so that even when there was a mistake, it's like a learning opportunity. Even when there was, I just made a mistake today. Like I ignored my intuition and it felt horrible and I felt really bad about it. And then I told myself, like, look how willing you are to learn. Like now you know for next time, and you wouldn't have learned if you didn't do that. And instead of beating yourself up and focusing on it and feeling bad about yourself for a very long time, which is what I would normally do, I'm like, I learned from it and I appreciate that I can take lessons from things that are difficult and make decisions to make it different next time. Like that shows how growth oriented I am. And like, I felt good about that. So, I feel like my connections with other people, just seeing the positive in them, seeing the positive in myself. Like, let's say I'm in a really bad mood when my husband walks in, and I can tell myself, oh my gosh, like he's never going to want to be around you. You're always in a bad mood all the time, or some of the time, too much of the time. Or I can be like, I really appreciate you giving me the space to go take care of myself. Like, you're so loving. And then I can appreciate myself. Like, look how well you take care of yourself when you need that space. And even if it's every day or every other day, like, you know what you need, and you're taking care of yourself, and you're not letting it on other people in mean ways. And you're committed to like calming yourself down and giving yourself love, like no matter what. And that's hard and that's beautiful. And you're giving a good example to your kids that they should take care of themselves when they're in a bad mood. And that even if they're in a bad mood for many, many, many times in the week, you're still lovable and you're still good enough. And I just love how no matter what, there's positivity going on. And I feel like it affects everyone and everything in all relationships. Like in the store, I mean, I told the bagger, I'm like, I'm not trying to. Like, I love how you are bagging the groceries in such a smart way and carefully taking your time to put in the boxes and the frozen stuff separately. Because, when I do it, I just throw everything together. They stick and the bags are bulky. And like the cashier was so happy. They were like, oh, I really want to do it right because I want to make sure that I take my time. But like just seeing the good in everybody. I mean, who doesn't want the good to be pointed out? Like when we point out the bad, it affects the relationship. When we point out the good, it affects the relationship. So I think that relationships can only be enhanced when we do this. Like, how could it not? Because everyone wants to be appreciated.
Yeah, I love that. And people who are listening, this is available to you too. We're doing it in person in Muncie. Scholarships available, hospitality available. Please reach out with any questions. Follow the links below, MussiDiskin.com/registration. I'm going to put a scholarship down there too, a scholarship request form down there too. And if you would like to donate to the scholarship fund, it's not too late. Go ahead and find the link down there too to help enable this for another family, for another classroom, for another school professional, whoever it is. This is here. It's so meaningful that I have a part in making this accessible and available to our community. So yes, I'm so grateful for that. And thank you, Rivkie, for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And for being such an inspiration of the approach where everyone around you just wants to learn it too.
Yeah, it is I feel like that's the purpose that I was born for. And it's cool to be able to live that out. I do remember I saw in you, Rivkie, and see in you that I relate to in myself, which is that it's not that after the CTI you walk out and you're like transformed and your life is better, but it gave me a taste of what's possible, and I wanted that so badly that after I fought for it. And the difference is that after the CTI, I had the tools to fight for it with. Like that I know, like Rivkie's like, oh wait, whenever I try to come on and I can't always, but like whenever I come on, Rivkie's there. Like the monthly connection meetings, the trainer network, there's different versions of the Zoom meets that like we can join. There's podcasts, there's just people that we met at the CTI that we could reach out to, that we could talk to, chats we could be part of, just like keeping it alive and working for it. And ultimately it's in my own heart, taking the time to do those resets where I'm changing the way I'm viewing myself, changing the way I'm seeing what's going on in practice, even if it's after the moment, even if it's a few weeks later, because I fall into a deep pit, but then I take myself out, sit with a journal, write down, what the greatness is or whatever it is. Slowly, these changes start happening in a way that lasts and sticks and becomes a new default and a new way of just being in the world. And so, yeah, it's not like a magic, like come to the CTI and you'll never have to work a day in your life. There's plenty of work left after. But the connection and the tools and the knowing what's possible and the doing it together and knowing that we're leaving the CTI holding hands and in this together, is just really a big gift and exciting. So thank you, Rivkie. Thank you, all our listeners. Hope to see you there. Check out the links below, and till next time.